Very good. Thank you, Ron. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks to all the attendees. We definitely appreciate your time and attention. So I'm Richard Hector. My friends call me Hector. I'm part of the digital transformation team here at Extreme Networks. So working with our internal teams, as well as our customers and our partners, understand what business transformation, digital transformation means to them, and help them migrate down that path from an infrastructure perspective. So for the next maybe 15 minutes, I want to kind of go through and share more about Extreme and what we feel like we bring to the market, how we're helping our customers. And of course, I want to share a case study with you as well to make this kind of more relevant. So the agenda is pretty brief. It's, again, who is Extreme Networks? Recognizing that we're probably not a household name to many of you. So I want to talk about who we are, what we do, and most importantly, I believe, why we do what we do. I think that's really the critical element, is why we exist. The case study I'm going to feature is around point of sale for one of our very, very large customers. So I think you'll find a lot of relevance in terms of the problem statement there, as well as the resolution we were able to bring to bear. So just a quick at a glance slide about Extreme Networks. You can read the various segments here. The one element I want to focus on is the one in the bottom and in the center, and that is, after the sale is made, obviously support becomes of critical importance to our customers and our partners. And we're proud of the fact that if you were to ever call into Extreme Support, whether it's our professional services or our global TAC, this is a 100% in-source organization for us, which has led to just incredibly high customer satisfaction as far as when they turn to us for ongoing support after the sale. Okay, so we're incredibly proud about that. So our mission is recognizing the fact that infrastructure connectivity needs are growing more complex by the day. Make no mention of what happened during COVID. It really took a lot of the natural evolutions towards digital transformation and, of course, significantly compressed those timeframes. So our mission, our why, if you will, is to help reduce the complexity that our customers face. Now, of course, we do bring technology-based solutions to help make life a little bit less complex for our customers, but we also address things like licensing. If I were to characterize really the top 3 challenges that our customers express to us, oftentimes, of course, they're technical in nature, but always in the top 3 are challenges related to either complex licensing models or expensive licensing models that have existed in the space for quite a while. So we've addressed that. I want to talk about how we've done that, what it means to our customers as well. So bottom line is, we're looking to make a simplification across the board as far as the technology concerns that our customers are faced with. So as Ron mentioned, I'm based here in Tampa, Florida. Of course, it's also now home of Tom Brady, but I like to think I was here first. And if we're using appearances at the Super Bowl as a metric, Extreme Networks has been to as many Super Bowls as Tom Brady has, right? What do I mean by that? For 8 consecutive years, Extreme has either been the Wi-Fi and or wired network technology provider, but more important than that, for each one of those 8 years, if you look at the white circles that represent each Super Bowl, that white shaded element there represents the fact that we have been the Wi-Fi analytics provider to the Super Bowl, no matter where it's held. And this has been for the last 8 years. Now, why is this important? Ron alluded to the fact that information or data is really the new currency, right? So the degree to which we, as Extreme Networks, can provide analytics to the hosts of the Super Bowl event is absolutely of critical value. We give them insights into what's happening on the network so that they can delight the fans and they can ensure that everyone's having a wonderful experience. And where necessary, they can use this as a foundation for monetization going forward. So again, for 8 years in a row, Extreme Networks has been the analytics provider to the Super Bowl. We're incredibly proud about that. So that same set of technologies, of course, that is made this possible for the Super Bowl and any other sporting event also is applicable across other verticals as well, including financial services. So information, application, data are absolutely key. Now, Somebody else on the call alluded to the fact that the stock market has been on a roller coaster, mostly in the downward direction. I built this chart just a couple of nights ago because I think obviously we're proud of it, right? If you overlay Extreme Networks, shown here in purple, relative to the market as a whole, the NASDAQ in particular, relative to our 3 primary competitors, you can look those up, we've fared extremely well. So this is a 2-year look back. So this, to me, this is a reflection of the trust that our customers have placed in us, and it's reflected in our share price. Of course, this is not everything, but I think it is an important metric as well. So I wanted just to show that. Okay, enough of the flexing. Let's keep going. Let's talk about solutions. So if I build this slide out, this would really represent, from an infrastructure perspective, any organization across the country, across the globe for that matter, right? From a data center perspective, most organizations ran one or multiple data centers that would serve as the information hub for the various branch locations, wherever they may be. Of course, over the last several years, there has been this move towards digital transformation, namely moving from organizationally owned data centers, leveraging SaaS-based applications, right? So this has been a trend that's been happening. As I mentioned before, COVID did a lot to compress this evolution. The one big change, however, is we have seen in a very, very drastic way a move from data centers to the notion of the user being the center of data. Okay, that shift alone has been a sea change, and it's been a sea change, and it's meant that organizations have to think very carefully, while also doing it very rapidly, about how they serve the users, whether they be customers, employees, partners, that could now exist anywhere, whereas in times past, it was much more of a fixed location, much more predictable type of manner. So this is the kind of problem that specifically we have been focused on as an organization, trying to help our customers A, understand, and B, solve. And one of the ways that we articulate this to the market is through what we refer to as the notion of an infinite enterprise. To us, this means having a unified network, one network that is meant to serve the user, customers, applications, regardless of their geographic proximity, where they happen to be. The second thing, of course, the enabling component of this very much is cloud, right? The cloud platform, I'm going to talk about what we do there in just a second, but I think it is arguably cloud is the most flexible, scalable, and increasingly most secure manner of providing connectivity to different constituents. And of course, we believe we are uniquely positioned as the vendor of choice from an infrastructure, analytics, application visibility perspective to make this all a reality. Okay, so this is what we mean when we talk about the infinite enterprise. So what does this look like kind of in practice or more practical sense? At the heart of what we do is an application called Extreme Cloud IQ, or XIQ for short. This is our cloud-based application for providing onboarding of infrastructure, visibility to the underlying infrastructure, whether we're talking wired, wireless, SD-WAN. Increasingly, it doesn't really matter. It is just the network. It is just the plumbing. But XIQ is the platform that we use for providing this infrastructure and giving the network operators access to understanding what is happening on the network. It is where the tool that we can use to derive insights and analytics from the underlying infrastructure. Now, the reality is, it doesn't really matter which customer we're engaging with. As much as we would like for them to standardize on Extreme, for us to be the vendor of choice, the reality is there always exists some significant portion of the network that is either legacy in nature or is comprised of third-party devices as well. One of the strengths that we bring, one of the real values of the XIQ platform is the idea that we can not only manage and monitor, of course, our own hardware, but we can provide the same level of visibility and management over third-party or even non-cloud native hardware as well. So this derives specific value for our customers because now they can have that vaunted single pane of glass, if you will, but it's even more than that. It's a unified database on the back end, but I'll call it a single pane of glass for simplicity, not only to the the Extreme Networks infrastructure, but also for third-party and, in fact, non-cloud native devices as well. So this provides a great level of simplification and visibility across the entire infrastructure set. So just drilling down a little bit further here. So I mentioned in the beginning, one of the things we'd like to try to do is simplify the life of our customers from an infrastructure perspective. One of the ways in which we achieve that is by giving them choice over which cloud provider they would like to utilize Extreme Cloud IQ in, right? So the application exists across all of the big three cloud providers, so it's entirely up to our customers which platform they choose to use, right? It's entirely up to them. The second thing, and I alluded to this before as well, is that licensing has become overly complex, and complexity tends to lead to higher costs. So we've introduced what we refer to as a universal license concept. And to me, one of the litmus tests of if you're doing the right thing as a company is, do your competitors tend to follow suit? And one of our largest competitors recently announced the notion of a universal hardware and licensing as well. For us, this is something we've done for many, many years. What this means in a fundamental sense is that it doesn't matter what a customer is deploying from an infrastructure perspective, they can utilize the same license for that device. So that as they're making purchasing decisions, they don't have to think about, well, I've got X number of access points and X number of switches and X amount of SD-WAN. It's just a totality, and you apply a license. And as the network evolves and changes, you can move licenses accordingly. It's universal in that sense. Makes life much, much simpler from an infrastructure acquisition perspective. Life is much simpler, and it affords a great deal of flexibility as well. Not everyone at this stage of the game is wedded to cloud. There's still a healthy segment of the market and our customers that prefer to have either a blend of cloud, public cloud and private cloud, or still in the federal space, for example, there's mandates there where they have to remain entirely on-premise. So again, this is another area where we differentiate from our competitors in giving customers choice and flexibility as far as how they like to deploy. Now, I've said a couple of times up to this point that that data is the new currency, right? Data insight, and specifically historical data. If we have a wealth of historical information, we can make better decisions around what's going to happen in all likelihood going forward. So one of the things that we do in our cloud platform that, again, distinguishes us and also provides value to our customers is that we allow them to have unlimited historical data retention. Okay, so if you think about this from a retail perspective, for example, understanding future trends in terms of spending habits of customers, having this historical data is absolutely imperative. And then, of course, no discussion around infrastructure is complete unless we have a healthy discussion around security. And if you contrast us to some of the other vendors in the infrastructure space, in the cloud infrastructure space, oftentimes they will point back to the security certifications that have been obtained by the cloud providers, and that's wonderful. However, we've taken security one step, a giant step, I should suggest, further by going through and undertaking the rigorous steps to obtain our own industry security certifications as an independent platform. And again, we've done this so that we can maintain the cloud choice. Customers can rest assured knowing that Extreme has undergone the steps to ensure that our application, Extreme Cloud IQ, has obtained in many instances the very same security certifications that the large cloud providers have as well. All right, so that's really it as far as who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do. I want to focus now just for a few minutes on a specific case study. Now, in this case, it's the solution, kind of fast forwarding, the solution is around Extreme Cloud SD-WAN. And while I'm sure all of you have heard of the term SD-WAN, the fact is there is no industry-wide definition for it. If I were to create a Venn diagram of 10 vendors' definition of SD-WAN, they would be overlap in the center around things like the ability to fail over amongst different wide area circuits, for example, and make intelligent routing decisions. So those are the common elements. At Extreme, we've taken a decidedly application-specific view for our SD-WAN solution, right? Because at the end of the day, networks only exist to serve applications. So we want to provide the insights to those applications on a customer's network. And as important, we want to provide the assurance that those applications are going to be up and available at all times. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in. Now, I'm not at liberty to divulge the name of this particular customer, but for those of you that are old enough, you might remember a nursery rhyme that goes, old had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. I'll let you fill in the blank, that second word, okay? And that's enough of a hint. That's as much as I'm going to give. So that aside, the customer I'm focusing on here is a very, very large food retailer in the UK. And as part of their digital transformation evolution, they became increasingly reliant upon the wide area network for processing credit card transactions. Around COVID, during the time COVID was happening, as they were either closing restaurants or changing the way in which those transactions were conducted, less human interaction, more so based upon kiosks, one of the things that they were finding is that those credit card transactions were not occurring within a short enough period of time for the processing agency to consider it a valid transaction. So if that occurred, if the transaction was either not approved or denied within a finite period of time, it is deemed lost, and therefore it's a lost sale or a lost transaction. So this is what was happening because of some issues on the underlying network. Of course, those challenges led to, of course, customer satisfaction issues, right? Because people were walking away hungry or hangry, probably in this case, right? Clearly, the franchisees for these restaurant locations were none too pleased because they're losing major revenue. And of course, the franchisees and the overlying organization as a whole was also losing revenue. So there's just widespread pain to be had in this specific instance, all caused by the fact that there was no way to ensure the credit card transaction was happening within a timely fashion. As I said, part of the value that Extreme Cloud SD-WAN provides is visibility to the applications that are flowing across the underlying network, and equally as important, assurance based upon assigning priorities to the most important and critical applications, assurance that those transactions are going to go through. So we deployed Extreme Cloud SD-WAN on top of the customer's existing network to provide that visibility and assurance, thereby increasing the likelihood that the transactions were going to go through successfully. So this solution was deployed across 1,600 restaurants in the UK. Rough numbers, the savings per franchisee were anywhere between $15,000 and $25,000. I'm sorry, I said dollars, I meant pounds. 15,000 pounds and 25,000 pounds per franchisee per week. The ROI for the entire deployment across 1,600 restaurants was well less than a year. In this case, we're talking about 6 months. Okay. What this also allowed the restaurants then to do is to no longer rely upon deploying very expensive fixed wide area circuits. They could be much more agile in terms of standing up kiosks by leveraging 3G and 4G connectivity, even though those networks are oftentimes suspect and they're tied to the kind of connectivity that's available in terms of the signal. By having the assurance of Extreme Cloud SD-WAN on top of that, even if it's a subpar underlying network, we can provide that application assurance. So this meant that they could stand up more restaurants more quickly. They could be much more agile in their deployment. So the overall net reduction in credit card processing errors, there was a 70% reduction, and the annual savings across the entire enterprise, in this case, was 25 million pounds. So a very, very strong case study and a very real example of what can be done by deploying an overlay solution, in this case, Extreme Cloud SD-WAN, that is focused specifically around understanding the application and assuring those applications are running well across the network. So let's kind of visualize this a little bit further. So this was the original design, traditional, again, network design, if you will, multiple branch locations, in this case, restaurants. The application was being served initially from a private data center. But again, as I mentioned, they were going through an evolution to SaaS-based applications. So what they were finding is that because there was no way to identify and assure the POS transactions, they were kind of being lost in the sauce, if you will, right? There was a great deal of loss and pain, as I described on the previous slide. What we did was we deployed our SD-WAN on-premise devices These are physical appliances that sit just at the edge of the network that gives us visibility to all of the traffic that's flowing across the network. By first listening to the flow of traffic, we understand which applications exist. In this case, we knew the target application was their POS transaction. We put in place policies to ensure that regardless of what was happening on the underlying network, we can ensure that the POS transactions were going through and happening successfully. So once that's done and that initial pain point has been resolved, this then gave the customer the confidence and the ability to begin to expand their suite of services to offer to their customers. So doing things like Uber Eats or another organization called Just Eats. So once they could trust the underlying network and the Extreme Cloud SD-WAN solution and assurance that we're providing, it gave them the capacity now to build and to be able to expand the value that they're deriving from the network. And then it also led to less important, but still nonetheless important, ability to provide their employees to give their employees the ability to use applications that are important to them. They're not business critical applications, but they're important to the employees in terms of customer employee satisfaction type of thing. So they could run these non-essential applications on the same network while knowing that the Extreme Cloud SD-WAN solution is going to prioritize mission critical applications over less critical applications. And in fact, the dark lines that you see here are meant to suggest that for non-critical applications, we actually don't even run them across the same network as the POS traffic. We can dynamically move that directly from the branch locations, from the restaurants, directly to the internet. Okay, that's another level of intelligence that we can bring in understanding the application, how they should flow, and what priority they should be given. And then from an overall enterprise perspective, giving them real-time visibility to the applications from an end-to-end perspective is something that they never had before. So now with the Extreme Cloud SD-WAN solution that's been deployed, we give them the real-time visibility over the application of any type, and then they can go about assigning additional priorities to various applications that may come online. So that in a nutshell is what we did in this particular case relative to this challenge that the customer was having. And again, it's all about visibility to and assurance of the application. That is what the lifeblood is of any organization, whether it be in the financial sector or otherwise. So hopefully it just gives you a glimpse as to who we are, Extreme Networks, what we do, and why we exist. And again, I appreciate your time and attention. Happy to take any questions. If not, I'll hand it back to you, Ron.